Some cases become famous because the public wants justice. Others become famous because the public wants certainty. And certainty is not always the same thing. The Garlasco case is one of the most disturbing examples Italy has. Not only because Chiara Poggi, a 26-year-old woman, was killed inside her family home August 13, 2007, not only because her boyfriend, Alberto Stasi, was eventually convicted after a long and complicated legal path, not only because years later a new investigation has placed Andrea Sempio, a friend of Chiara's brother, at the center of a completely different prosecutorial hypothesis, but because this case has become something larger than a murder file. It has become a machine for public certainty. First, certainty around Stasi. Now, for many people, certainty around Sempio. And that is the danger, because if we simply move certainty from one man to another without improving our reasoning, we have learned nothing. This is GrimSpotting, and GrimSpotting does not exist to solve cases in the comment section, does not exist to build fandoms around suspects, does not exist to turn victims into puzzle pieces. The method is different. Reconstruct the catastrophe, protect the victim, keep the public from mistaking emotional satisfaction for truth. Garlasco is a high-caution Italian case about forensics, legal reversals, and public certainty, and it needs to be handled only with updated legal history and careful wording. So before anything else, we need the status of the case as clearly as possible. Alberto Stasi remains, legally, the only person definitely convicted for the murder of Chiara Poggi. The Court of Cassation confirmed the conviction and the sentence was 16 years. In June 2026, Stasi left prison after the Tribunale di Sorveglianza granted him affidamento in prova ai servizi sociali. That matters, but it does not mean acquittal, does not mean revision, does not erase the final conviction. It is a sentence execution measure, and reporting from RAI and Il Fatto Quotidiano has stressed that it is separate from any possible future revision proceeding. At the same time, the Pavia prosecutor's office has closed its new investigation into Andrea Sempio, advancing the hypothesis that Sempio, not Stasi, killed Chiara. Sempio denies involvement, his defense contests the reconstruction, and he has not been convicted. That is the state of the case. One legal truth still stands. A new prosecutorial hypothesis now challenges the old narrative, and the public is tempted, again, to become certain before the process has finished. For many years, the public story of Garlasco had an ending. Chiara Poggi was killed. Alberto Stasi found her body and called for help. He became the center of suspicion. He was acquitted, then acquitted again, then convicted after further proceedings, with the Court of Cassation confirming the conviction. That legal path alone should make any serious viewer cautious, because this was never a simple case. It was never the clean story people wanted it to be. There was no confession, no murder weapon found, no single cinematic piece of evidence that made everything obvious. Reuters summarized the older case as one centered heavily on forensic traces and disputed timelines. Stasi's conviction dividing public opinion, and that is already the first lesson. When a case lacks the emotional simplicity the public wants, the public often manufactures simplicity. It does this by building a suspect-shaped story. The boyfriend found the body. The boyfriend behaved strangely. The boyfriend's account has problems. The boyfriend must have done it. Now, that does not mean suspicion was irrational, but suspicion is not proof. A strange reaction is not proof. A gap is not proof. A forensic trace is not proof until it is placed inside a reliable evidentiary structure. And a story that feels complete is not automatically true. The recent developments make Garlasco even more dangerous for public reasoning, because now the public is being offered a new possible story. Andrea Sempio, who had already been looked at in earlier phases and whose position was previously archived, is now the focus of the renewed investigation. Prosecutors have pointed to several elements, including DNA material, an alleged palm print, a revised time window, phone calls, notes, and interpreted audio or statements. But listen carefully to the words. Prosecutors allege, defense contests, experts interpret, materials are being reviewed. A possible revision is being discussed. None of that equals a final truth. The Milan Prosecutor General's office received materials related to the new investigation, reporting saying the review review was meant to solicit consideration of a revision of Stasi's conviction. The same reporting also stressed that this would not be a short or easy study, and this is where a lot of public discourse becomes sloppy. Some people now talk as if Stasi has already been exonerated. He has not. Others talk as if Sempio has already been convicted. He has not. Some treat the new investigation as proof that the entire old process was corrupt or absurd. Others treat the old conviction as proof that the new investigation must be fantasy. Both instincts are too primitive. The correct position is harder. Stasi remains the definitive convict. Sempio is the central figure of a new prosecutorial hypothesis. The revision of Stasi's conviction is not automatic. A future trial of Sempio, if it happens, not magically erase the procedural steps required to revise Stasi's sentence. This is not a scoreboard. This is a legal and evidentiary collision. Garlasco is especially powerful because it lives inside the aura of forensic certainty. DNA, imprints, timelines, computer activity, blood interpretation, phone records. These words sound scientific, and because they sound scientific, the public often treats them as if they speak with a single voice. They do not. Forensic evidence is powerful. Forensic aura is dangerous. Take the DNA material under Chiara's fingernails. Recent reporting says new analysis found compatibility with the paternal line of the Sempio family, but also that the result does not identify a single individual with certainty. It's a significant distinction. Compatibility is not the same word as identification. A biological trace is not automatically a narrative. A trace can be meaningful and still limited. A trace can point toward an investigative hypothesis without carrying the whole case by itself. There is the so-called Impronta 33, the palm trace. Prosecutors reportedly consider it central and attribute it to Sempio, while Sempio's defense challenges that conclusion. Reporting also notes that the blood issue around the trace is disputed. Some interpretations speak of blood and sweat, while Sky reports that earlier tests for blood were negative and that prosecutors themselves could not speak of blood traces based only on images. Again, this is not a detail for internet certainty. It is exactly the kind of detail that requires expert discipline. Then there is the time window. Some newer technical reporting suggests a later possible time of death, with TGCOM 24 summarizing a window around 10:30 to noon and a stronger probability around 11 to 11:30. If correct, matter because it interacts with Stasi's computer activity and Sempio's alleged alibi, but if correct is doing serious work. A revised time window is not a movie twist. It is an expert claim that must survive contradiction, method review, and legal testing. The same goes for the parking ticket, the calls, the notes, the intercepted audio, the alleged motive. Each item may matter. No item should be inflated beyond what it can carry, is the GrimSpotting evidence rule. A strong case is not a pile of dramatic fragments. A strong case is a structure, and the question is not whether each fragment is interesting. The question is whether the structure holds. The most important thing about Garlasco right now is not only that the case has new developments, it is that public certainty has started to migrate. For years, the emotional center of the case was Stasi. Now, for many people, the emotional center is Sempio. The names have changed. The mechanism may be the same. A person becomes the container for collective horror. Once that happens, every detail starts bending toward that person. A note becomes confession-shaped. A phrase becomes guilt-shaped. A search history becomes soul-shaped. A facial expression becomes evidence. A silence becomes proof. And a denial becomes performance. This is how bad true crime trains the public. It trains people to think they are investigators because they can feel suspicion. But suspicion is not investigation. And certainty is not intelligence. The dangerous viewer is not the viewer who says, "I do not know yet." The dangerous viewer is the viewer who says, "I know enough," when the file is still moving. That was dangerous in the Stasi phase. It is dangerous now in the Sempio phase, and it still will be dangerous if the case changes again. One of the ugliest things in high-profile true crime is what happens to families. The public says it wants justice for the victim. Then it treats the family like supporting characters. If they speak, they are judged. If they stay silent, they are judged. If they accept a verdict, they are accused of denial. If they question a verdict, they are accused of betrayal. In June 2023, 2026, Marco Poggi, Chiara's brother, spoke publicly about the pain caused by the renewed case and the new wave of speculation. He said he remains convinced by the final judgments against Stasi and unconvinced by the new elements against Sempio. He also spoke about the wound of seeing Chiara's memory dragged back into public conflict. Whether one agrees with him is not the point. The point is that the family is not an obstacle to the audience's game. They are people who lost Chiara, and they have had to live for nearly 2 decades inside a national argument about the worst day of their lives. That means victim dignity cannot be just a phrase. It has to discipline the video. No humiliation, no gore bait, no suspect fandom, treating Chiara as the introduction to a debate about men. Chiara Poggi was not a symbol. She was not a puzzle. She was not a content object. She was a person. And if the public loses sight of that, it can be right about some facts and still morally fail the case. So what can a disciplined viewer say today? Known, Chiara Poggi was killed in Garlasco on August 13, 2007. Known, Alberto Stasi was definitely convicted and sentenced to 16 years. Known, in June 2026, Stasi left prison under affidamento in prova ai servizi sociali, but that does not erase the conviction and is separate from any revision process. Known, Andrea Sempio is now the central figure of a new investigation and the Pavia prosecutors have advanced a hypothesis against him. Known, Sempio denies involvement. His defense contests the prosecution's interpretation and he has not been convicted. Known, materials from the new investigation have been sent toward the Milan Prosecutor General's office in relation to possible revision questions. But revision is not automatic and has not, as of the latest reporting I found, produced a completely legal overturning of Stasi's conviction. Alleged the prosecution's reconstruction involving Sempio disputed the meaning and weight of the DNA, the palm trace, the revised time window, the parking ticket, the audio, the notes, and the broader interpretation of the scene. Unknown, the full historical truth, unless and until the legal and evidentiary process establishes it with sufficient force. That latter is not emotionally satisfying, but it is honest, and honest is better than satisfying. The Garlasco case matters because it forces us to face a brutal question. What do we do when legal finality and investigative uncertainty begin to pull against each other? Some people want the answer to be simple: trust the verdict, no matter what. Others want the opposite simplicity: destroy the verdict because new evidence exists. But serious reasoning lives in the middle. The verdict matters, the new evidence matters, the family matters, the accused person's rights matter, the victim's dignity matters, the forensic limits matter, the public's uncertainty matters, and none of these things cancels the others just because we are uncomfortable. This is why public certainty is so seductive. It ends the discomfort, it gives the horror a face, it gives the story a shape. It lets the viewer feel morally complete. But certainty can be premature, certainty can be tribal, certainty can be lazy, certainty can become a way of avoiding the harder work of evidence, and in true crime that is dangerous, because the cost of being wrong is not paid by the audience, it is paid by real people, by victims, by families, by suspects, by witnesses, by everyone trapped inside the public appetite. So the lesson of Garlasco is not Stasi is innocent, it is not Sempio is guilty, it is not the courts are always wrong, it is not the new investigation is automatically right. The lesson is darker and more useful than that. The lesson is that public certainty has a life of its own, can attach to one person for years, then detach, then attach to someone else. And if the public does not change its method, the same violence repeats under a different name. GrimSpotting exists for that method. Known, alleged, disputed, unknown. Legal truth, historical truth, moral truth, not always identical, not always synchronized, and not always emotionally satisfying. Chiara Poggi deserved truth, not spectacle, not a national argument that forgets her, not a suspect-shaped entertainment machine. Truth, and truth requires discipline, especially when the case is famous, especially when the evidence is technical, especially when the public is hungry, especially when everyone wants the final sentence before the process is finished. The case file is not a comment section. A new suspect is not a verdict. A final conviction is not omniscience. And public certainty is not investigation.